like and subscribe. What is the most gruesome thing you have ever seen? When I was a kid one day at a water park, I was next in line for one of those nearly vertical 100+ foot slides. The kind where you lay back and cross your arms and gain enough speed to skip across the water like a rock at the bottom. A drunk guy shoved me aside and ran past me. He jumped, grabbed the bar above the slide, and swung himself forward, far out and away from the face of the slide. I watched as he landed on the rocks below and became more puddled in person. Gore everywhere. That haunted me for a while. Edit. This was 20-something years ago at a place called Redditis, USA, which has been closed and abandoned for many years. It is a big creepy ghost town now. I can't find any references to the accident, only to the weirdo owners and their crimes that led to the park closing. No, my family wasn't part of the ministry. Voluntary MT. Older lady who lived alone had a stroke and laid on the floor alive for a number of days. Her kids had welfare check on her and we were called when cops arrived. The arm she laid on was flattened like a pancake and essentially dead. She had soiled herself numerous times and laid in it. When we got her off the ground, part of her leg was still left on the floor due to what I can only guess is the acidity from the urine and feces. She was put on hospice and died about a week later. It still haunts me from time to time. It pops into my head at random moments. A cow carrier's head was crushed by a 10,000-pound coil of steel. His head was pinned between the coil and the machine he ran. I heard the sound of the coil hitting, turned to look and saw the blood running down his arm. My first thought was he hurt his arm. Then I realized what happened. After 40 years I still have bad dreams. A young kid dying in the street having just been hit by a car while riding his bike. His body was just twitching and moving involuntarily in its last moments. The vision of it will never leave me. It was on a common route for me, so I was reminded of it weekly until someone eventually removed the makeshift memorial. If it is any consolation, he was not twitching in his earliest moments, so he was most likely already dead. That twitching happens post-death, and is the peripheral nervous system shutting down and randomly firing muscle fibers. It is often a result of a clean and sudden death. It is sad, but I hope you can be reassured by the fact he probably felt very little pain, if any at all. I was the first person on the scene of a fatal car crash. An elderly couple got T-boned right in the driver's door when they pulled out in front of a pickup. I went to the driver's side first, but the old man was clearly dead. I ran around to the passenger side and the lady was moaning horribly and moving her arms around in a weird way. Found out later it's called posturing and is caused by significant brain trauma. She also had some milky stuff oozing out of her ear. Everything happened so fast, it seemed like the police showed up in an instant, but I'm sure it was 10 or 15 minutes. As soon as they showed up, I just left. Found out later they both died. They were just in town visiting their daughter. It was pretty sad. The guy in the pickup walked away from the accident, and it wasn't his fault. They pulled out right in front of him. That milky stuff was cerebrospinal fluid. Incredibly traumatic skull fracture. Poor woman. When I was 12 or so, we had this jackass down the street that would spend all his money on motorcycles, cars, lights under said cars and motorcycles, late 90s early 2000s. One day we are in my dad's car checking the mail at the community mailbox thing, and said motorcycle dude is going through the neighborhood doing a wheelie. Well, our neighborhood was super ghetto, and so were our roads. Cracks, potholes, uneven/crappy asphalt repairs. Dude hits a pothole and rears all the way back. Well, I guess his hand slipped back on the accelerator, and he rockets back super fast. He wasn't wearing a helmet. We watched that dude's top half of the back of his skull come off from the high-speed/coarse asphalt, and his brain was literally out of his head. One of our other neighbors was there and didn't really know what to do, so he started trying to scoop dude's brains back in his head while my dad sped home to call the ambulance. Surprisingly, dude survived at least for a little while, but was a total vegetable. Ed me up as a kid. No silly brains. Get back in your bone cup. A non-operational morgue freezer full of rotting, dead bodies. Worst day of my life. So I do TikTok moderation. We constantly watch the most horrible things, but the first time I had to watch a video of child pornography, I vomited and cried for a good while. I'm still pretty traumatized, but unfortunately it was only the first time. We get that kind of content on a regular basis. There's also plenty of suicide and murder as well as animal torture. Edit cause people seem curious. I've also watched someone microwave a cat. That was one of the saddest things. Animal cases are some of the absolute worst for me, because you know how helpless they are. Her infant get ejected from a car through the windscreen onto a concrete road. My dad was taking me home from dance class on a dark rainy night. The woman driving in front of us was going too fast round the roundabout. She swerved off the road into a tree. She had her seatbelt on, but her infant was in a car seat in the front passenger side facing forward, and he wasn't actually strapped in. She got out, and was screaming and crying, "I killed my baby." My dad stopped to help, and to call the emergency services. We had to wait there for them to show up. When they did, they put a blanket covering the baby's body. Honestly, it was horrendous. I still remember seeing his body hit the floor. I hate hearing about people losing their children. Not much gets me teary-eyed anymore, but the thought of something happening to my daughter or something happening to make her legit cry out of sorrow makes me feel like I'm gonna die. However, I also, now, get infuriated when I see people do dumb that puts their kid or kids at risk. Front-facing car seat in the front seat of a car, and not securing the child in it. What the was she thinking? When I was younger, I saw a girl commit suicide on a bridge. She tried to hang herself, but the rope broke, and she landed on the rocks underneath. She survived for 12 hours after that, and died in the hospital. Probably a patient who was in a car accident, and when I walked towards them, they stuck their hand out at me, and 2 of the 4 fingers holding on by literally a small amount of skin fell off. I have seen a lot of head up as a paramedic, but I feel like majority of it is depressing rather than gruesome. My uncle is a retired fireman, and one time he told me he had been on a call due to a person seen on the train tracks at night. When they found the person, he had been sliced in half by the train. But what freaked my uncle out was that when he walked up to him, the guy reached out to him because he was still alive. The guy died shortly after. Former crime scene cleaner. Where do I even begin? Not the most gruesome, but the one job that will always stay with me was a decomp. 8 weeks in a bathtub during the peak of summer with no account in the apartment unit. Basically was soup by that point with so many bugs we used a shovel. The most gruesome jobs were always very unfortunate. Some movies though, I would consider to be a pretty accurate representation of what I saw. Newspaper reporter Hero vertical bar monitored a motorcycle versus transport truck on the police scanner. Truck made a left turn into the path of a crotch rocket going far too fast. Rolled up, gave head nod to cop securing scene, and start taking photos. Cross road to take advantage of better lighting, and spot a motorcycle helmet in the ditch. It was not empty. Finding my brother's body, after he had shot himself in the head with a 9mm, can never be unseen. We had a guy who cold no decided if he wanted to stay on the turnpike or get off, so he drove his pickup at about 90 miles per hour right into the divider. We found him laying in the median holding his intestines while actively trying to fight us. Donut drink and drive kids. Bloated waterlogged corpses. Saw a kid get dropped on his head in a Blink 182 mosh pit. Cracked like an egg. YEAD asterisk. I'm shocked at how unsafe some water parks are. It seems like at any water park people could just easily fall. There should be nets or something all around to prevent this type of thing. Also, sorry you had to see that. My EMT friend has a similar story. Pretty much the same thing, but it was an old man And he was infused into the ground because of the urine etc like you said. They assumed he was dead, but realized he wasn't because he made a small sound. When they lifted him up, my friend said it made a sound identical to ripping Velcro. I'm nasty. Damn it. I have only been awake for 30 minutes and that is already enough Reddit for today. My mother used to work home health as a physical therapist. She was on the way to a client's home one evening and a guy on a crotch rocket bike flew past her on double yellows on a little 2-lane road. They topped a hill and he T-bones a truck pulling out of his driveway. The guy flies off the bike and had to have skid across the ground 100 yards easy. My mom jumps out of the car and runs to assist the guy. She said that Heller's dead on impact. He was not wearing a helmet. Heller's a meat crayon. But the worst part was his body stopped in a fire ant mound. The vision of that guy's smashed, peeled, raw face with ants crawling all over his eyes and nose has been stuck with her forever. This was 20 years ago, and she still gets woken up some nights by that guy. The speedometer on the guy's bike was stuck at 110. What a fine way to go. If it is any consolation, he was not twitching in his earliest moments, so he was most likely already dead. That twitching happens post-death, and is the peripheral nervous system shutting down and randomly firing muscle fibers. It is often a result of a clean and sudden death. It is sad, but I hope you can be reassured by the fact he probably felt very little pain, if any at all. That milky stuff was cerebrospinal fluid. Incredibly traumatic skull fracture. Poor woman. No silly brains. Get back in your bone cup. I hate hearing about people losing their children. Not much gets me teary-eyed anymore, but the thought of something happening to my daughter or something happening to make her legit cry out of sorrow makes me feel like I'm gonna die. However, I also now get infuriated when I see people do dumb that puts their kid or kids at risk. Front-facing car seat in the front seat of a car and not securing the child in it. What the was she thinking?